This is, somebody asked, what number is this of my Zoom lectures? I believe this is my 10th lecture now. It has been a pleasure to lecture. It has been, as Sandy mentioned, a lot of work. I didn't realize that Calendimaggio would be the enormous task it was until, as Pino said, I tried to summarize in 1 hour over 50 years of incredible spectacles. Because Calendimaggio, as we know it today, was reborn in 1954. It is our medieval festival, first initiated in 1927 by the mayor of the town at the time, Arnaldo Fortini, and his idea was to bring to life the rites of May, celebrated principally in the countryside, the singing in of May on April 30th, when people sang door to door, and then joined together for glasses of wine, fava beans with fresh pecorino cheese, and some singing. And then this started in 1927, a kind of simple Calendimaggio festival in the evenings. World War II came along, and by 1954, after World War II, Calendimaggio, as we know it today, began to evolve. So we will be talking about the Calendimaggio festival and its Roman roots and pre-Roman roots. Before I start, I would like to thank those of you who've already made contributions, donations, very much appreciated. Thank you in advance to those who will follow up making donations as a contribution to my work on this. And I would like to thank for their photos, Jerry Spector, Judy Dalton. There was also help from Janet Item on photos. The Kelseys sent me some photos. And special thanks to the Ente Calendimaggio, which is the association responsible for Calendimaggio, who very generously let me take advantage of their wonderful collection of photos. I also would like to thank the Association of Sbandieratori, the banner wavers of Assisi, who also let me use some of their photos. So my thanks to all of these people. Now, I should actually wear my Calendimaggio flag, my scarf. I am Sopra, Upper Assisi, so that is why I'm dressed in blue tonight. And this is a competition between two sections of the town. Sopra, and our color is blue, Upper Assisi, and Sotto, our enemies, and their color is red, Lower Assisi. I have behind me my Calendimaggio hat, which I'm generally wearing when I'm up in the stands for Calendimaggio. I was up there with Sandy, Jerry, and some of the other people I'm sure who are watching this have been to Calendimaggio with me. Calendimaggio is above all an explosion of vitality, creativity, and a peaceful competition, if you will, somewhat reviving the medieval competition between these two sections of the town, Upper and Lower Assisi. We call Lower Assisi La Magnifica Parte di Sotto. Their color is red. If you look at this picture, you can see that lovely couple from Sotto with their little baby in red. Look at the picture and look to the right, and you'll see Elvio Pietro Lunghi, town doctor, and his lovely daughter Livia. They're dressed in the blue. Like me, they belong to the Nobilissima Parte di Sopra. And the two parti, or districts of Assisi, come together during Calendimaggio for a somewhat peaceful competition, re-evoking in many ways the bloody competition which erupted in our town in 1347, when the people of Upper Assisi, the Napis family, attacked the people of Lower Assisi, the Fiumi family. The Napis were Ghibellines, that is, those who supported civic authority or the feudal emperors. And the Fiumi family was, the upper was the Ghibelline, and the Fiumi family was Guelph. And they came into bloody conflicts for about 200 years, from the 14th century till about the 16th century. So now with Calendimaggio, we're sort of having a peaceful competition, remembering those days when the competition was not so peaceful between the two sections of the town. It is a festival of the first day of May. Calende means first of May in Latin. And it is a rite of fecundity, fertility, of joy, the renewal of the natural cycle, the rebirth of the cosmic cycle, if you will. Its roots are definitely in the Roman period, and we'll be talking about that. Let's see if we can go here. And as mentioned, between Magnifica parte di sotto are the events and the Nobilissima parte di sopra. Here we have sotto coming into the main square. The flag to the left in red and blue is the Assisi Calendimaggio flag. The colors of our town are red and blue. Our flag is a blue cross on a heraldic lion on a red. So the colors of Assisi, red and blue. Sotto, therefore, red. And sopra's color is blue. And here we have the partaioli, or the members of the upper part of town, as they're about to enter the main square on one of the days of the festivities. And with this little map here, I'd like to show you what I mean by upper and lower Assisi. We're looking at a map of Assisi. Right in the center of it, roughly number 14, is the main square, Piazza del Comune, the square of the municipality. From the main square down the hill to the west is Sotto, from the main square to the Basilica of San Francesco, which you can see down to the left. Sopra's territory is from the main square up, heading east, including the Basilica of St. Clair, the Cathedral of San Rufino, where our first Christian bishop is buried, Rufinus, and even the Rocca Maggiore, the fortress of the 14th century, which towers over the top of the town. The festival is about joy, celebration. It is about May, so a significant element of the festival on all days of the festival, now 4 days, used to be 3 days, is the Maypole. Maypole has ancient origins. It was significant in the Celtic celebrations of spring called Beltane, celebrated in 1200 BC. Beltane meaning firing light, the welcoming of spring, the celebration of May. A part of Calendimaggio, a significant part, of course, are the dances, dances of joy, of the nobility, and also the creation of images of flowers, anything to do with the floral cycle, the rites of associated with the Roman rites of the seasons, those dedicated to the goddess Flora, for example. The dances are also dances not just of nobility, but of the popolani, that is the simple peasants. And you can see the joy in these young girls. They're obviously from Sotto. Their sashes are red. Look at their excitement. Look at the thrills they're feeling as they dance into the square, welcoming into the square other members of the Parte di Sotto. And here they are. Some are the men carrying the staffs and other young women as well. These will be from the class, not the noble class, but the class of the popolani, or the simple peasant people. An important element of our festival is the sharing of food. Market scenes will figure almost every day in the Calendimaggio presentations. And presented with such fun and such joy. Look at the man in the foreground. He has the loaf of bread around his neck like a wreath. Next to him, a friend has a bag of bread hanging off his shoulder. And you can see the gentleman up at the top there, they're cutting the porchetta. A porchetta is still served at country festivals. The sharing of food again, and these here are the Benedictines. The Benedictines were here long before the Franciscans. Benedict was born in Norcia in the 5th century AD. So this was a monastic order prevalent in Assisi in the Middle Ages. The Calendimaggio, after all, is about the time of St. Francis of Assisi. That is 13th century. The Benedictines here at the market, buying foods perhaps to take back to the monastery. Sharing of foods here among the popolani, the common people, the peasants, and look at the garlands in their hair of branches of trees and probably myrtle branches, which are symbol of fertility and regeneration. Some of the scenes take place at night, and it's difficult for, these photos are from the Calendimaggio Association. The night scenes are presented not for the fabulous for the people of the town, but for the judges who come through to see the night scenes of sopra and of sotto. This festival is very seriously judged by a medieval musicologist, a medieval historian, and an either film or theater director. None of the three judges may be from Assisi, nor even from Umbria. This festival is very seriously judged. This is a beautiful backstreet scene. It's a market scene at night. The little boy on the right reminds me of our own son, Mattia. He was in the Calendimaggio as a child, as were Julia and Keegan, and he's now nearly 40. And I remember when he was 5 years old, he was in one of the night scenes of Sopra, and the next morning I said to Mattia, what was it like? Did you have a speaking part? And he was dressed as a little peasant boy who assisted somebody at the market selling legumes. And he said, yes, I had a speaking part. And I said, what did you say? And he said, I had to go up and down the street shouting, lenticchie, 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 because the vendor was selling lentils. Some of the food scenes are centered on elegant banquets. This is a noble banquet. This is obviously the parte di sopra because most of the nobility are dressed in the blues. Now, I'd like you to note something here. Look at the background. Those textiles prepared for this scene were used for this display in this 2-hour presentation 1 year, and they'll never be used again. The preparation of Calendimaggio takes months before. I would say work starts would be, if it were happening next May, work would be starting now. Work goes on in carpentry, wrought iron, stonemasonry work, textiles. Then the medieval dance groups practice. The medieval music groups often are writing their music. They're practicing their instruments. The choirs are practicing. The passion, the work that goes into Calendimaggio is absolutely unbelievable. So just all this background material that you're seeing here, the textiles hanging up, those are woven textiles, were used for this scene. They won't be ever used again. These pieces of beautiful textile, which were made for this banquet scene of sopra, the same thing, sotto. This is the Magnifica parte di sotto, the magnificent section of Lower Assisi. They will never be used again either. They were just done for this presentation. This is another banquet scene, and in the foreground, you can see that the people at this banquet, and I think Jerry and Sandy were with me that year at Calendimaggio. This photo actually might be Jerry Spector's. At this banquet scene, the people at the banquet were entertained by trained birds dancing before them. One is the peacock you can see on the right. Other scenes of daily life in the Middle Ages are depicted at Calendimaggio, as, for example, the dyeing of the wools, the dyeing of the textiles, the dyeing of the silks and the cottons. And look at those people having such a great time. And my word, isn't every Italian a natural actor? The Calendimaggio will, of course, depict battle scenes because conflict, strife, tournaments were a part of the May events. In the Middle Ages, there were days called the Feste di Maggio, the celebration of May, and the Campi di Maggio were an integral part of medieval life in the Middle Ages. The Campi di Maggio meant the battlefields of May, and troops would gather together in May, preparing possibly for attacks, preparing for movement to other territories. And why in May? Because the forage was good. And they could feed their animals, and well-fed animals meant animals prepared for an attack. So you'll see many scenes of battles and so forth in Calendimaggio. This is a scene of crusaders actually returning into Assisi after being in the Middle East on a crusade. Competitions are an essential part of Calendimaggio. One is the crossbow competition. Here's the crossbower here. And next to him is Lady Spring, who was chosen following the crossbow contest. And we'll be talking about that. An integral part of the festival, of course, are drums and flag waving, the medieval banners. Very important to the festival are the exquisite costumes. Some people own their own costumes. Some of the costumes of the nobility are rented. and great attention is paid to the authenticity of the costume. One year, an American woman I know living in Assisi, this was years ago, she just moved here with her 2 little girls, showed up the day of Calendimaggio and wished to participate in the festival. And they were told by the organizers of Upper Assisi that they were not able to participate because their costumes were not authentically medieval. One year, Assisi lost the competition on the basis of the judge, who was a medieval historian, saying one of our dances was about 20 years into the Renaissance period, was beyond the Middle Ages, and we lost that year. So that's how serious this festival is. So the festival is about joy, it's about interaction, and it's above all about love. Look at the picture on the lower right. That is a scene, obviously, from 2 partaiole from La Magnifica Parte di Sopra. She's holding a blue rose. These young lovers are obviously from the Magnifica Parte di Sotto. Upper is Nobilissima Parte di Sopra. How can I forget my own parte? We are noble. They are magnificent. And he's holding a red rose. The origins of Calendimaggio go way back in time, probably originate even in the Germanic Celtic traditions. In 1200 BC, the Celts were celebrating the arrival of May in a feast called Beltane. The Romans celebrated the goddess Flora as of the 3rd century BC. She's depicted here in a fresco of Pompeii. And on the right, in the 15th century exquisite painting called Spring by Botticelli, which is now in the Uffizi. And the goddess Flora was the goddess of the regeneration of plants, the goddess of blossoms, of all that is budding. And in fact, look at the dress here, the detail of the dress of Flora, the extensive use of flowers, many variations of floral motifs on her dress. This is a painting by Tiepolo. This is 18th century of the rites of Flora, the Roman rites of Flora. This was a feast for women, actually, and above all for the courtesans of Rome, for the prostitutes who participated in mock gladiatorial battles. Those are women there on the left. And it was a display of overt sexuality. It was very, very many events were very lascivious. There was a great celebration of music, of dance, and men were not allowed. Flora was so important that she was one of the 15 goddesses of Rome with her own flamen, which is a high priest. So the Dea Flora, or the goddess Flora, had her own high priest. Another goddess celebrated in May by the Romans was Bona Dea. There's 2 images of Bona Dea, 2 Roman statues on the right and on the left. Notice the serpent next to her on the statue on the left. Bona Dea, the good goddess, in a way, isn't she somewhat to be associated with what for the Christians becomes the great mother of all nature, that is later called Madonna, My Lady? The Bona Dea was also celebrated by the Romans and by Roman women. No men were allowed at the feast. The festivities were held in the home of the Pontifex Maximus, which the church will later adapt, the pontiff, to call the pope. But the Pontifex Maximus was the head of all the flamen, all the high priests of Rome. And the goddess Dea, Bona Dea, was so important that her festivities were held in his home, although he couldn't be present. No male anything could be present at the festivities to the goddess Bona. That included male animals, had to be eliminated from the house. His house was used, but all the decorating with roses and flowers and so forth was done by his wife and the high priestesses. The high priestesses offered sacrifice. In particular, it was the Vestal Virgins who sacrificed a pregnant sow to the goddess Bona. A pregnant sow was actually sacrificed as well to the goddess Flora. A sow, why? A sow can give birth to multiple piglets, as many as 12. So she is the symbol of regeneration and fertility, the regeneration of the natural cycle. Bona Dea. This is an image, a beautiful image of Bona Dea and the festivities of Bona Dea. It's a sculpture of the 1st century AD on the Ara Pacis in Rome, the altar of peace, built by Augustus Caesar in the 1st century AD. Bona Dea's festivities were celebrated at night, hidden from all men. There was a goddess whose festivities were celebrated during the day, and that was Maya. This beautiful mosaic is actually in Tunis, in Sousse, Tunis. It's from the 3rd century AD. It represents the goddess Maya. Maya, giving us the name May. Mayas could come from the Latin maius, meaning major in the sense of most important, but interestingly, it might come from the Latin suis maialis, and that means pig, because also pregnant pigs were sacrificed to the goddess Maya. So interesting, this pig associated with May, and in modern times, the porchetta is what is sold as wonderful street food, especially in May. The festivities of Calendimaggio are closely related to the Piantarmaggio festivities, which take place on April 30th in San Pellegrino of Norcia. And some of you have already seen these images in my talk on pagan Christian rites. Maya, related to Piantarmaggio. In what way? She too was a goddess of fecundity and fertility. And in San Pellegrino, on the night of April 1st, the vigil of April 1st, April 30th, teams of men go out to the countryside. They cut down a huge poplar tree, strip down the branches, haul it into the main square, dig a huge hole, and raise it up. Maypole, erection, fecundity, fertility, it's all related, isn't it? This is the Piantarmaggio festival. And look at the maypole being brought into the main square of Assisi during the Calendimaggio. And of course, we all know about the maypole as a Nordic rite, the Swedish, the Celts, the Germanic peoples. So these are all interrelated. April 30th is also the night of music, the night of singing in May, and that is called Cantarmaggio. In 1976, it was our first April 30th in Umbria. Pino and I were asleep, exhausted after a long day working the land. And we were awakened at 3 a.m. by a group of men singing under our window. We didn't know what Cantarmaggio was. They certainly didn't do it in Wisconsin on April 30th, and they certainly didn't do it in Palermo, where Pino was from. We leaned out the window. We thanked them. We clapped. There was someone playing the accordion. There was somebody playing the tambourine, somebody playing an instrument made out of kind of sticks, wooden sticks that were clicking together. We invited them in for wine, and we asked them how we could thank them. And they said, please, le uova, eggs. Interestingly, symbol of fertility, but eggs would be given by the farm people who might not have had much else in their house, but they certainly had eggs. And the Maggiaioli, the men singing in May, would sing all night through the countryside, starting about 9 o'clock when it was dark, singing till 7 a.m. By the time they finished, they had hundreds of eggs. Those eggs would be sold, and the following week, they'd have a delightful dinner together in some restaurant in Assisi. This is a group on the left. This gentleman is blocking his ear. He's part of a group singing the songs of May called Cantarecchia, singing by ear. He's putting his hand over his ear so that he can listen to the singer to whom he must sing a verse of response. They're often invented verses, but he's blocking his ear so perhaps he isn't hearing the accordion player behind him. This is our daughter Julia with a couple of her friends enjoying the Cantarmaggio, and they were singing at our house. This was just a few years ago. There are two of the singers, and then they came into our house, And this is a picture I took in front of our fireplace. And of course, we gave them eggs, and we wish we'd known they were coming because we would have offered, bread, cheese, ham, vino, and something similar, cakes perhaps. This is a delightful photograph of a group of Maggiaioli. This photo was taken over 100 years ago. And this was a group singing house to house through the countryside. And they were all bearing maie. Maio is also a flowering branch, which were presented to young damsels by a young man who hoped to win over their affection. So the Maio comes from the name Maya. April 30th is one of the first events of Calendimaggio in Assisi. It's the presentation of 5 damsels from La Magnifica Parte di Sotto, they're on the left in their red, and 5 damsels from the Nobilissime Parte di Sopra. These should be, we say this a bit tongue-in-cheek these days, innocent young damsels who don't know yet too much about love adventures, shall we say. In theory, these are young women without their first love experiences. And one of them will become Madonna Primavera, or Lady Spring, reigning over the festival. On April 30th, they're presented to the public. Backing them are the flags of their parte. You can see on the left the first red flag of Lower Assisi, and then behind 3 other flags, because each parte has 3 terzieri, or 3 sections, and on the right, Upper Assisi. If the weather is inclement, the festivities take place indoors in one of the rooms of our 14th century city hall. And the young damsels, one of whom will become Madonna Primavera, are serenaded with music, which is an integral part of the May festivities, and then integral part of the festivities to Flora, to Bonadea, and to Maya as well. And singing to them are members of our Assisi choir here. Poetry is recited to them. This young man is reciting a poem in medieval Italian. And here are the young damsels of Sotto, and they're sitting on the stage because this is the day, and these are young damsels of Sopra, this is the day that one of them will be chosen to reign over the festivities. How are they chosen? Not on the basis of intelligence, not on the basis of beauty, not on the basis of talent. This isn't a Miss America contest. This isn't Miss Universe. They are chosen by the winning of games. And these games take place in the main square. The young damsels are off to the right. They're out of the picture here. And there are 3 sets of games. The first is the Tiro della Fune, which means a tug of war. And this is between those of Upper Assisi on the left in blue, Lower Assisi on the right. And here you can see in the foreground, Lower Assisi, in the background, Upper Assisi, and look at the faces of the people in the background from both parte who are cheering them on. And another of the contests is the Treggia. The Treggia is a country sled, if you will. The rural people perhaps had 1 farm cart, but to make a farm cart, you had to have income because a wheelwright had to make the wheels. So they also made tregge. These are kind of sleds, which the farmer himself could make, and he would use these to drag in the crops from the field. So this is the race of the tregge, the sleds. And there they are running through the Piazza of Assisi. To the left is the Temple to Minerva, the 1st century BC, which is the backdrop for all the festivities of Calendimaggio. And then the third contest is the contest of the crossbow, and it is going to be one of the crossbowers who will be choosing Madonna Primavera, because the winning crossbower will take the band off, which is on his arm. Can you see this crossbower here? He's from Sopra. He's got a band on his arm. It's in blue with a bit of red. That's the symbol of Upper Assisi. Under his armband is the name of one of the damsels. He himself doesn't know who is on his name. He doesn't know who he's striving so hard to win for. And the let me just think of the name in English, the crossbower, who hits closest to the target, pulls off his armband, and under is the name of his damsel. This is the year that Guglielmo Bernardini won. He's in blue here on the right. He's looking very proudly at the young damsel who is now Lady Spring, because her name was under his armband. Next to her on her left, which would be on her right, which would be our left, is the Maestro del Campo, who's the master of the field and reigns over all the festivities. This is another year of Lady Spring, and this year La Parte di Sotto won Lady Spring. And you can see the excitement here of the crossbow gentleman who won for her and his excitement. So the flags, an integral part of Calendimaggio. Our flag is the one on the right, the flag of Assisi, that is. It is blues and reds, and this is to explain to you why the colors are blues and reds. We have a cross on a blue background and the rearing line on a red background. They're both crowned with a crown with 5 towers. That is the banner and the coat of arms of the city of Assisi. Therefore, the colors of the two competing parti are red and blue. This is the bell tower of Assisi. In the picture on the left, you can see the banner of Sotto hanging there and the banner of Sopra. And throughout Assisi, in all the back streets, these flags are fluttering for the month of April, all through the month of May. On the left, we're obviously in Upper Assisi, blue flags flying. On the right, Lower Assisi, red flags flying. You can see Upper Assisi on the left, Lower Assisi on the right. And the reference point for Lower Assisi is the stunning Basilica of San Francesco of the 13th century. And on the first day of the Calendimaggio festival, the blessing of the banners of each parte will take place in their respective churches. And for Sotto, it's inside the Basilica of San Francesco. Here you can see the partaioli, or the members of the parte di Sotto, in the Basilica of St. Francis. Before them, which would be laying right in front of the altar, are the 3 banners from the 3 different terziere, or sections of Sotto, and a priest will bless them. The blessing for the banners of my parte, which is Sopra, will be in the Cathedral of San Rufino, built in the 12th century. It houses the body of San Rufinus, patron saint of Assisi, who was martyred in the 3rd century AD. And he was first Christian bishop and is Assisi's patron saint. Saint Francis is the patron saint of all of Italy, along with Catherine of Siena. And St. Francis certainly participated in the joyful song brigade, singing house to house under the homes, the windows of the homes of the damsels of Assisi in the 13th century. He participated in the Feste di Maio, the feasts of May. Into the Cathedral of San Rufino for the blessings come young men bearing our 3 banners. You can see 2 on the right, members of our crossbow team. They're all in blue. These are the 4 young women the year this photo was taken who were our candidates for the election of Lady Spring. And members of the Parte di Sopra, from very young to much older, are all near the altar awaiting for the blessing by the priest of our banners. Laying on the floor of the Cathedral of San Rufino, you can see the blue banner, which is Sopra. And to the right and the left, the 3 banners representing the different sections of our Parte di Sopra. There's applause after the blessing is finished by all the people in the cathedral. This applause is a good wish for success in the Calendimaggio, for the hopes that we will bring home the palio. Palio, you know, isn't a horse race, it's a banner. And the banner is won by one of 2 sections every year after decision by the judges, the final night of Calendimaggio. This blessing of the banners is the only religious moment in 3 to 4 days of festivities related to the birth of spring. This is the only religious moment, is the blessing of the banners. Nobility leave their cathedral because they're going to be heading soon down to the main square for the beginning of the first day of festivities of Calendimaggio. The banners are carried out of the cathedral. The crossbowers come out with their crossbows. The young damsels, one of whom might become Lady Spring if Upper Assisi wins the competitions, they're going down to the main square. This actually is Guglielmo, who the year that I took this photo, Upper Assisi won all of Calendimaggio. We won Lady Spring, and he's the one who shot closest to the target, and under his armband was the name of one of the young dames. This is Dr. Pietro Lunghi with his lovely daughter Lavinia. They're about to go into the main square for the afternoon events, but first of all, a little bit of espresso. Now, they no longer participate in the events dressed up, but they participate in the stands. And this is the group of all the partaioli cheering madly. And this was 1 year after we won the games. And you could see Pietro there with his blue scarf, waving it, and his wife. And I'm up there somewhere too, because I always sit near the partaioli of Sopra. Flags are integral to this festival, and also the waving of the flags by the sbandieratori, or the banner wavers. And the banner waving is an ancient custom. It's related to the Campi di Maggio, the fields of May, which take place in the 13th, 14th century on. When troops gathered in the battlefields, they were ready to go off to do battle. Their horses were well nourished by the new forage, which grows in spring, off to do battle. And one of the most important, or the most important young men among the troops were the sbandieratori. They were the banner wavers, because waving those banners were signals. How they flung the banners up indicated the movements of the enemy troops, indicated the tactics of the enemy. The banner wavers had to know how to speak multiple languages so that if they were caught, they could speak to the enemy. And they knew very well that bearing the banner was literally a question of life or death. If captured with that banner, they had to be ready to die. 1 year, one of the sbandieratori was telling me about the medieval traditions of the sbandieratori, and he told me that one of their movements, all these flingings have different names. The flinging straight up and out had this significance. If you were stuck in a battle and you had the flag and they were coming towards you, what you wanted to do was fling it up and over the heads of the enemy so that perhaps one of your fellow members of your militia could grab the flag and run, because running the flag is what would give heart to the people and the determination to continue and win the battle. So this sbandieratori, and this is a photo actually of Jerry Spector. Thank you, Jerry. I'm pretty sure this is yours. The sbandieratori still today, although they're not performing to save Assisi from a battle, they perform with the great passione of the sbandieratori of the past, flinging them up here in front of the temple to Minerva, and incredible gymnastics, incredible coordination, beautiful, graceful movements as they perform. This is one of the final moments when they jump. This man has jumped over, I believe, 9 others sbandieratori. This is the final moment of their performance. There's the team of the adult sbandieratori and the young people, the teenagers as well. And there's even a team of very young little sbandieratori, because in Assisi, your passion for Calendimaggio begins young. If your father was a sbandieratori, or your uncle or your cousin, you may wish to be one yourself. Here's a group of young sbandieratori just before they performed, their flag twirling in the main square. They did quite well, actually. And on the right, we have a young sbandieratori with the gentleman who teaches the whole team of the young ones. And on the left, the little drummers. Drumming, too, is an integral part of Calendimaggio. We have the teams of the main drumming teams of Upper and Lower Assisi, but both sides also have the teams of the small little drummers. And these are little drummers from the Magnifica Parte di Sotto in red. This little drummer is tired. And this is a photo I remember of Janet Item, and thank you very much, Janet. She does wonderful photos of people's faces. And there is the drumming team of Sotto about to go into the main square, because every day, every event is announced by the drummers, and that beat of the drums just gets everybody going. It brings up a passion of everyone. And here's Sopra drummers. And very important as well are the chiarine. The chiarine are the brass trumpets, which are blown. Right here, the trumpeters are announcing the beginning of the festivities of Calendimaggio, because they are announcing the arrival in the square of the master of the field, who will be presiding over the festivities. Here are some of the chiarini. They're going to play the Inno of Assisi, which is our hymn, which is really something that gives an emotional wallop to everybody listening to it. And there are the players of the chiarini about to announce. They're announcing now the beginning of the festival of Calendimaggio, because it starts now with the consigning of the keys of the city by the mayor. There's our present mayor, Stefania, in her mayor's sash. She is going to give the keys of Sotto and Sopra to the Maestro del Campo. There's Pepe Marini in his black. He's the master of the field. This means that now Assisi for 4 days no longer belongs to civic authority, but to the Calendimaggio. And there is the Maestro del Campo proudly holding the keys, as if to say, the city of Assisi is now ours. It belongs to Calendimaggio. So this is now the official beginning. Nobility of Sotto, nobility of Sopra, flanking the master of the field, backing the chiarine, as they're called, those who blow the trumpets. Integral to Calendimaggio, of course, is the maypole, the symbol of fecundity, regeneration. Many different scenes during the 4 days of festivity having to do with the maypole regeneration. Look at the excitement of these young men. They're bringing into the main square the base of the maypole, which will be raised up in much excitement. To stand in the main square, they'll be dancing around it. The young man on the left is going to leap, and with his leap, the pole is going to go up. And you can see him on the right. The pole is now up. Banners come out from it, and young people hold the banners and dance around the maypole. The maggio, which is like the May branches left by young men on the doorsteps of their young loved ones or young women that they hope would someday consent to be with them in marriage. These young men with great passion are bearing the maypole on their back into the main square, and everyone will soon be dancing around it. These young people are from the Parte di Sotto, and they're bringing a maypole into the main square. Now it's up, and they'll be dancing around it. And this is another year in one of the events during the day in the main square of the Maggio, the dancing around the maypole. Dance is an integral part of Calendimaggio, both the tripudianti, which are the dances of the young women, and they do them weaving up and down in loops. This is taught to them by the teachers who teach medieval dance, and they practice these dances all winter. And not only young women dancing, but young women and young men dancing together. Now, I don't know in my own country how many 15 or 16-year-old boys I would see in tights and white shirts holding hands and dancing with 16-year-old girls. But there they are in Assisi. This is another presentation of the medieval dance. So integral part of the festivities, the dance, and the presentations of incredible scenes from mythology, folklore, Religious. One year there was a whole scene of the Black Death. There was another scene of preaching by Franciscans. I've seen scenes of the flagellants, those who would whip themselves in penitence. Absolutely extraordinary every year. Look at this as a scene taking place in a church, and all these textiles were made by the group of Sopra just for this one scene. And again, these textiles won't ever be used again. We now have a museum of Calendimaggio. It's up in the Rocca Fortress. It has to be extended because there's so much to put in that museum. This is a scene at night of the phases of the moon, because the moon and the sun are often celebrated in scenes in Calendimaggio. There are scenes also of the four elements: earth and fire, water and air. This is a fountain being brought into the main square for a scene of the flow of water, the regeneration of flora and fauna through water in the springtime. And you can see the beautiful textiles hanging between the columns of the Minerva Temple. Again, textiles used for this one event, and that's it, including the beautiful tapestry on the ground, used for one display, 1 2-hour program. Took months and months to make. One year, I must share this right now before I forget it. One year, I will never, ever forget, the stands went totally quiet when this scene took place. Even the people from Upper Assisi, because this was a scene of Upper Assisi, did not know about it, because many of the props and et cetera are done in quiet so that people from the other side can't spy on you and so forth. A young damsel walked into the main square near the fountain, and behind her unfurls her veil, and she was going to be Lady Spring. The veil was so long that it was carried by 16 women on one side, 16 women on another. It was all embroidered, and it extended from the fountain to the Temple of Minerva. Absolutely astounding. And there was just silence. Nobody knew what to say. This is a delightful scene I saw one year. And this is banquet. And they're actually having a banquet in a boat here. And you can even see the textiles on the ground used to make the waves. This is a nighttime scene. That whole scene of a village behind was made of wood and tiles and so forth, and painted for just this one scene 1 year. Very integral to Calendimaggio, of course, is the beauty of the costumes, both of nobility and of the peasants. Nobility on the left and nobility here on the right. And these are damsels, lovely women of Upper Assisi, nobility. And you can see on the right, 2 women from Upper Assisi, the young people on the left, obviously from Soto in red. And extremely beautiful scenes of medieval legends, folklore, original scenes written by people after doing research. This scene on the right, this young man is confronted by all these beautiful birds, and he had captured them and was about to let them go. This young woman on the left had been captured, and she was pleading for liberation by the young men from another country who had captured her in one of the scenes. Look at these exquisite costumes. Again, costumes used for 1 year, one scene of maybe 1 to 3 hours, and never used again. A common motif also in Calendimaggio is sun and moon. And here, dancing in the main square on stilts is moon over there in white, and sun has our back to us. And then these panels on the right, all painted, were all the zodiacal symbols. This is one of the nighttime scenes. This is sun. And one of the delights of Calendimaggio is just looking at the people that you know very well. I know all these guys. These Italians are natural actors. They're all natural actors. No special training, no professional actors. These are all local people acting their hearts out with joy. Look at the drama in this scene here. And you can see here the great dignity in the face of this nobleman standing behind the damsels, one of whom will become Lady Spring. and the young people with great seriousness participate in this festival. And I wanted to put this photo in because the young man on the left is my nephew, Anthony, and he is a banner waver for Lower Assisi. And here we have Lower Assisi on the right with the banners out, and nobility of Lower Assisi coming into the main square. And the children participating in Calendimaggio from the time they're very small. They grew up participating in this festival. It's something that they're born with, really. Sometimes they're in the arms of a mother, sometimes in the arms of a grandmother, sometimes in the arms of sisters. And here you can see the children with their parents. Other scenes of beautiful women with their children. And here's a father with his daughter and two little guys, a drummer and a banner waver. They're small now, but they'll grow up, and someday they'll be banging those drums with all the force of an adult, maybe waving the banners to announce the beginning of this glorious festival called Calendimaggio, the first days of spring. And may you soon join with me in attending this festival, Calendimaggio, rooted in Roman rites, expressing many aspects of the medieval splendor of Assisi of the past and the splendor of Assisi today.